let's wrestle with this Magnetone lap steel from the late 1940s or early 1950s. It's covered in lovely pearloid. These are interesting on a couple of fronts. One is the tops have this curvy sculptural thing molded into them. There's a bit of a dip and a hump. It gives you lots of clearance for your finger picks while still affording you a resting place for your delicate wrist. The other thing is the pickup. It's not that easy to show you, but it's been installed under that veneer of mother of toilet seat. Jake Wildwood says that these are wax potted right in place, so you know you're not stealing this one for your cooter caster. The defenses are just too strong. Too much damage would happen trying to get at it. That's weird. What's it need? Tuner buttons. These could just as easily be used to complete a guitar worth 20 times what this retails for, as you find them in a lot of early Gibson electrics. However, like many of their ilk, the celluloid plastic gave up long ago. It withered and decayed and dropping away like some unused umbilicus. Magnetone was a California company that was started in the 1930s under the name Dickerson Electronics in LA. They made lap steels and amplifiers and other electronics like radios and record players, etc. In the 1940s, the company was sold and the name changed to Magnetone, which is a good name. Through the 50s and into the 60s, they made various models of guitar, a lot of solid bodies. But at this point, they're probably more well known for their amps, some models of which are very highly prized, and the brand name was resurrected about 10 years ago. I think a number of famous players had some input on that. You guys remember the Fretted Americana videos from back in the day? Phil X was always plugging into a vintage Magnetone, and boy did it ever sound good. So these are vintage split post Clusons. I actually prefer to pronounce it Cluson because it sounds like a 1950s robot. These are single line Clusons. They have the text there saying deluxe on one line down the center. Let's ponder the thinking behind the slotting on this nut. You can see they're angled, but seemingly away from where the string comes off the tuner post. You can only imagine the convolutions that it has to do to get through that slot and on its merry way. Because this is a snakehead style peghead, the tuners converge as they get farther away. Yeah, I don't know. The underside of the instrument is covered in a felty kind of material, but let's appreciate the wonderful spontaneity of the ferrule installation. It's full of life. Alright, which one of you miscreants hid or otherwise misplaced my favorite slotted screwdriver, the one I would use for this task? It was here last week, and now it's not where it's supposed to be. Hope the kids aren't breaking in again. Let's rid ourselves of this crumbly remnant once and for all. Just like Grandpa's back tooth. This shot is a sham. It's deceptive because immediately after I realized I'd left the accessory tube on my mini torch, changing it into a heat gun, and I'm just blowing hot air at it rather than tickling the shaft in the sizzling caress of butane's pretty blue flame. Because this does need quite a lot more heat to soften the plastic button. Got them all squeezed on to the correct depth and in a straight line. Yay. Stringing up a short scale lap steel for an open tuning is always a fun time. You get to go through all of your open string sets which you've previously pilfered for a single string that broke in all the odd sizes to come up with something pretty close to the recommended string diameters. And I'm within 1/1000th of an inch of all of them, so I'm feeling good. We look crackly. Yeah, must clean the pots. It's kind of sticky. It's old adhesive from when they adhered the felt. Okay, I'll try to get my cleaner in there. Well, this is slightly disconcerting. On the volume knob, I can hit the end and it continues to turn. These knobs are of really solid construction. They give you a kind of confidence. That feels more sturdy. The Fender Stratocaster. What is there to say about the Stratocaster? It was released in 1954. It was darn near perfect in its execution, right from the very first iteration. Went on to change music. Is it evocative of its era? Kind of. But it's almost timeless, really. It's as much a 90s guitar as it is a 50s, and it's a 2020s guitar too. You know, they called it futuristic, but I'm not sure what that future was supposed to be. 70 years later, it still does what it does very well. It sounds modern. It's always sounded modern. This one needs just a little bit of help. It's a 2011 Strat Deluxe, and it's been played enough that fret wear is starting to get in the way. The setup could use some tweaking. Sure is pretty though. I don't know what you'd call that. It's sort of like a candy apple fireburst or something. First thing that catches my eye is this bridge. The player says he never uses the bar. So this thing is floating an inordinate amount. He says he doesn't have tuning issues with it, but I would suggest that this is just a little out of whack anyway. The action's a bit taller than you'd need it to be, which is kind of what you'd suspect seeing the bridge floating to that extent. It is over 5/64ths on the bass side, 6/64ths on the treble. Yeah, that's too much. Here's the main point of concern. These have worn in very deeply, to the point where it's time to replace them. Initially I was wondering if I could get away with a partial refret, but looking up the board here, these are really flattened off and lowered. I don't know whether he has like buddy guy bending skills or what, but he's really taken some height off. Looking at these guys, they would have started off somewhere around 45 thousandths tall. And now they are in the range of, well, they're inconsistent. Like in the center of the board, it seems to be where the most wear is, and they're around 29 thousandths. You're graduating up to maybe 32, 34. So, I think it might be time. Yeah. See, that's 40 thousandths, 28 thousandths. That's a big disparity in height. And again, the neck has got way too much relief in it. It's around 18 thousandths. So that would be a place to start. Let's see if we can straighten that out some. I believe this has the biflex truss rod in it, which is of course the scariest of the truss rods from Fender. 1/8 of an inch wrench. Yeah, this has very little pressure on it. There we go. Now we're down to around 7 thousandths relief on the fret tops, and it's much less on the actual surface of the board. This is pretty close to straight. I'm guessing it's got about 2 thousandths relief, which is a place I'd like to start. when I'm doing a refret on one of these, that'd be fine. With string tension off, the neck goes into a slight back bow. Gotta score the lacquer along the side of each fret. These ones are going to come upwards rather than get tapped out to the side. Recently I've shown some vintage jobs. Up until 1985, Fender had an interesting machine that would pull the frets in. They were installed sideways. You know, they'd stick them in and it would get pulled basically across the board. That's not the case with these. Still have to score the lacquer though, because this is bled onto the side of the fret, and if I don't do this, they will frequently chip out in some nasty ways.
Oh yes, it's another fretting video. I'm going to apply some heat. I'm going to pull them out with my fret pullers. That came out nice and clean. Put some new ones in. I both hammer, clean off a little bit of glue, squeeze out, and give them a squeeze with the fret press. Remove the nubs from the ends, catching them carefully. Then I'll dress off those sharp ends with my angled file holder. Here's the bane of our existence in this style of fretting. There's a hunk of tang exposed in the curved and lacquered area of the neck that has to be flushed up with a tiny little file times 22 frets. We should make them all flat. And then having made them flat, we should make them round with a recrowning using a 3-corner file. Then there's the polishing, polishing, polishing. Finally, something you can both look at and touch. In a strange quirk of fate, both tone knobs on this guitar are just like the one on the Magnetone. You can keep turning and turning and turning. We'll clean the pots out on this rather advanced wiring scheme with push-pull and mega switch and a whole bunch of options. This player wants to be able to completely lower his middle pickup out of the way, so I had to add longer surgical tubing to the screws so it won't be flopping around. I added a coat of super glue around the knob recesses to give more purchase for the splines on the shafts of the pots, and that tightened them up considerably. You can no longer go beyond where you should be going.
To alleviate the forward pull of the bridge, I'm tightening up the tremolo springs. That's now sitting pretty close to level with the top of the guitar. It's kind of what I want to see.
I can dial in the intonation now and also adjust the heights of the strings for proper action.
Okay, all set up. This is Fender factory spec action height of about 4/64. You can see I've sunk that middle pickup all the way down as per the customer's instructions, which is kind of interesting because the Strat Deluxe actually has a secondary wiring scheme with a push-pull pot that gives you sort of humbucker sounds. When you're in, say, neck position, it'll be the neck plus the middle. If you're in the bridge position, it'll give you bridge plus middle to act as a kind of humbucker noise canceling. However, this is a very quiet guitar even without that function, and this player apparently spends all of his time in the neck position anyway. So, you know, to each their own. And yeah, very nice guitar. Quite fond of this one.